Fantasy Suite Week brings us fence jumps, but it also brings us windmills. We have a windmill this week, my friends. Let's first talk about fantasy suites in general. Do you guys remember back in like the early seasons, they never actually revealed that it was fantasy suite week. They would just go on these dates and then suddenly get these secret little cards with some ancient looking key in it, inviting them to a fantasy suite. And it was like, oh my goodness, what does that mean? Everybody was shocked. And now it's just like, fantasy suite week. And whereas I feel like most bachelors and bachelorettes made the fantasy suite seem like they wanted to just take that time alone without cameras to just like talk and enjoy each other's company without being filmed the whole time. Hannah, on the other hand, is like, so we are in Greece this week and Peter gets the first date, and Greece really is awesome. Every single date they went on is like, oh, that's beautiful, it's all beautiful. And Peter and Hannah had a really great date, I thought, and Peter could not stop smiling the whole time, aside from when they were in the midst of their R-rated makeouts. Jeez, Peter, watch your hands. Maybe her nose is always red because she's always making out with guys and pressing her nose against their faces. Just want to throw this in there that after their boat date, they had a quick preview of Bachelor in Paradise. Really excited for Hannah G, and Blake, stop crying. It's not real life. But back to Peter and Hannah. They go to dinner, and I love Hannah's pink outfit. She's really been rocking the pink this season a lot. And I love the conversation that they have. I feel like Peter's very mature and like knows what makes a good relationship, has a good vision. And Hannah the whole time is just kind of like, And now I like her, but sometimes I feel like she's not ready for marriage, and not necessarily on like a maturity level, just in general. Almost like maybe she's forcing the conversations a little bit when she's talking about being ready for a husband and wanting to find marriage and settle down, and I just don't get the feeling that that's really what she wants. It's just a vibe that I get. But she's also always talking, not always, but she mentions a lot that she has a very moody, crazy side. And although we've seen some fire in her, I wouldn't call her moody and crazy. So I'm worried that maybe she's secretly just a little terror, and whoever she's with is going to be in big trouble. Don't know yet. Either way, at least she's warning them all. This is what's coming. But then Peter tells her he loves her, and it was really cute. He, again, just couldn't stop smiling. I wonder if, at this point, if it's just like expected that the guys, all of them, tell her they love her? And does it like kind of take away the impact of somebody telling you that they're in love with you? So is it almost better to be the first one to say it? I don't know. But then they get the fantasy suite card, and it's the same card with the same message every season. Usually the same handwriting too. We all know it's not Chris Harrison's writing, but this script was a little different than we normally see. But we know it's not you, Chris. But that's not important. What's important is the fact that their fantasy suite is in a windmill. And this is not what I was expecting at all. I was a little bit disappointed because I was thinking maybe like 3 episodes back, her and another guy just randomly went into a windmill and we just didn't know about it. But no, it was just a fantasy suite date, a place where it's acceptable to do things like that. Then they go searching around their windmill, and we see that Peter brought his condom with him. No, but for real, now we know that they are provided. And with that being said, it's probably encouraged that they're used. They can say what they want, but Bachelor is trying to get you to get down. And then the cameras go away, but that's fine. We don't need to see it. We know exactly what happened in there. Twice. Plus, the next morning, Peter says, we came together so many times last night, and that's all I need to say about that. Next up is Tyler. He and Hannah get massages. So this was kind of like the Colton and Hannah G date. But Tyler keeps commenting on her beauty and saying he wants to just pounce on the table. What a flirt. Remember when I made the comment about him being a player? He definitely was previously. But either way, their conversation is very easygoing, even though he kind of seems to do most of the talking, seems like. But then he gets out of his own bed and starts massaging her. What a flirt. So Hannah is right about them having a very physical relationship, but I also feel like we've seen some good talks between them, and she fit into their family dynamic pretty well. But surprisingly, she gets to dinner with him and says, no coitus, Tyler. And he is like, dang it. And then I know I said I wouldn't mention it again, but this week, Tyler brings a whole new meaning to the short pants. But back to her fantasy suite boundaries with Tyler. She, first of all, is just flat out saying that the fantasy suite is there so that you can do physical stuff. Now, she didn't make it to Fantasy Suites with Colton, so I'm not sure how she knows that for sure, but she's definitely making it that way for herself. Or she could just be revealing all of the Bachelor secrets. Remember how much of a huge deal it was that Nick revealed that he and Andy got busy in the Fantasy Suites? Well, Hannah is just giving us the details before it even happens. She's like, hey, America, I'm about to bang in the Fantasy Suite. This could be turmoil for The Bachelor because we are losing all of the excitement of the unknown. That's like the one part of the whole show where you're like, oh my gosh, what did they do in there? But anyway, I thought for sure they were just going to end up doing it. But Tyler said, nope. Tyler cut it off. You know, Hannah, being the way that she is, would have just gone along with it. She can say, oh, no, I don't want to do that. But when it comes down to it, but good for Tyler. He is a classy guy, minus all of the makeouts on national television. But he leaves, and then Hannah starts crying, like getting pretty emotional. And we think that it's probably because she was thinking that date was going to solidify in her mind that Tyler was the one she's going to send home. But now she's like, oh, this is a great guy. It's because he is a great guy. And now, more water. And now Jed's date. And this is how I still feel about Jed. So he starts off the day by saying that the last time he saw Hannah, he was really angry. Now that'll really set the tone for a good date. But they go off on their date, another very simple one of just culture exploration. And Hannah's sitting there talking to a girl about dating a bunch of men and what her process is for choosing the right one. Never once saying like, I think Jed could be the one. Yikes, this guy. Hannah couldn't even look the girl in the eye the whole time she's talking about it. And Jed's over there looking like he's trying not to throw up. But then he takes Hannah, pulls her aside, and we get another Luke talk. I'm slightly annoyed that Jed feels like he needs clarity on Luke, especially after that huge blowout that Hannah had when she was telling everybody, like, respect my other relationships and stay in your own lane. Were you not listening? Just focus on your own relationship. But anyway, she flat out tells Jed that she has a connection with Luke, that it was instant and it was crazy. And he's kind of like, yeah, well, now how do you feel, Jed? That made your tummy all warm and tingly, didn't it? But he did react appropriately with a level head, so I give him props for that. But then they get to dinner. Wow, look at all these trees, Jed says. But anyway, he starts talking about their conversation from earlier, and it was very uncomfortable. He was very uncomfortable. He was stuttering all of his words, and Hannah was like definitely taken aback, which I would be too. Hannah looks really good on this date, by the way. But again, Jed is clearly very upset that Hannah would consider Luke as a partner. And the fact that she might think that Luke could be her husband is somehow affecting Jed's ability to love her. What the heck kind of love is that? Jed, if you are going to let this affect your relationship with Hannah, I don't know how you'll ever survive watching this season play back. She's straddling people. She's getting busy in windmills. There's quite a list. Are you going to need to go through the same conversation for every little thing that she does? Or are you just going to trust her, be okay with the fact that this is The Bachelor, and move on? I really think it's mostly just a vendetta for Luke, and he is just a little bit hiney hurt that she was trying to choose between the two of them. That's really what it comes down to, which I get. I said before I would be upset if I was in that situation too, but you definitely can't tell her that that's a sign that she doesn't have the means to recognize when there are things in her life that aren't good for her. That was bad. People say that Luke is controlling. That was controlling. Hannah is the Bachelorette. Okay, so she is allowed to go through this process and figure things out for herself. It's also just life, making life choices, learning from your choices and your decisions. You can help guide her in the healthy direction, but you can't tell her as a partner that the decisions she's making are a threat to your relationship. How is she going to rely on you ever if she feels like every step she takes is going to threaten the way you feel about her? Having Luke around doesn't affect the two of you. It's a side gig. Bachelorette is not polygamy. Okay, you have your relationship, and then that's like something totally different. And then he chalks it up to just being just that he loves her.
It's just because I care about you so much.
And she was mad and walked away, and I would be mad too. Then he goes after her, tries to stop her in like some really awkward prom photo pose. And it's possible that he didn't think his words through before he just blurted them out, but it was still pretty aggressive. But again, just says it's because he loves her, and she buys it, and they go off to the fantasy suite. He shuts the door right on cue, and we all know what happens in there. Now, I personally would have been mad at him the whole night, but that is a flaw of mine. I can't let things go. So Jed leaves the next morning, and I think Hannah is in love with him. I mean, just the way that she looked at him when he was walking away. And I just wonder, like, that same day, does she go on to her next date with Luke? Or does she have a day to, like, decompress, maybe refresh a little? I don't know. Either way, we get to Luke's date, and he's the only one that gets to go on, like, an exciting date. They take the helicopter ride to Santorini, and this date started out really great, I thought. They were both having just a great time, enjoying each other's company, laughing, smiling, holding hands. It was good. Nothing bad happened at all until dinner. Now, just a side note. First, Jed says, "Oh, look at these trees." And now Luke says, "Oh, this is darling. What are you, my grandmother?" But again, the conversation starts out good. He thanks her for choosing him to do something that was on her bucket list. Just like good stuff about the day, about their relationship. And then he starts talking about having a marriage that's the way he wants it to be. That was not your best move, Luke. Then he gets into the sex and being pure for marriage and how they both made mistakes, but also wants to make sure that they're on the same page about it, which I can respect. Some people have certain deal breakers. I would never marry a smoker, no offense, but it is a deal breaker for me. And this is his religious beliefs, like how he lives his life. So I get it, but he needed to approach it differently either way. He didn't handle it well. And clearly it didn't come off well because Hannah goes off. And Luke says, can I cut you off for a second? No. And she was right, I thought, about sin is sin, at least to an extent. Pride is sinful in the views of Christians, but it also doesn't have like a huge effect on an intimate one-on-one relationship so much as making love does. But then again, this is The Bachelor. And The Bachelor is not normal. And then now is a point where I think Luke realizes that he really screwed up and needs to like backtrack a little bit. But at this point, Hannah is just so livid that I don't think it's going to happen. He cannot redeem himself. I think it's safe to say that Luke needs to find a better strategy for communicating. And it kind of makes me wonder if he's ever been in like other serious relationships. But he also very clearly had a rough phase before he came onto the show, and maybe he just hasn't grown enough out of that and matured. Maybe it's still like some residual bad boy Luke in there and he hasn't gotten rid of it. I truly don't think that he means harm. I think he needs to grow up, he needs to mature and learn how to be a good partner who is non-judgmental and a little more selfless. And I think throughout his conversation with Hannah, they were both justified to an extent and both a little bit wrong to an extent. So I can definitely understand Hannah's frustrations with him, but I also do think she slightly overreacted and she was acting out of anger and emotion. And then Luke, I can understand why he wants to live by these guidelines of Christianity, but he approached it way too aggressively and made it all about himself, and it kind of came off as an attack on Hannah. I mean, it's just too far gone, I think, at this point for their relationship. It's too toxic. However, I do want to point out that I think this conversation was very similar to the conversation she had with Jed. The way Jed came at Hannah was kind of similar to Luke. They were both an attack on her character. But I think Jed was safe because he has a little less baggage than Luke. And he also didn't have another guy kicking him under the bus right before his date. All of that stuff plays in. Like, we're human, we have emotions, and it's easy to make decisions based off those emotions. And I think part of that was why the conversation with Luke was a little bit more exaggerated. It wasn't a good one. No, but I do think it was blown up more than it would have been in other circumstances. And one other thing I just want to say. So when he says you owe it to me to let me give my 2 cents, essentially, I think that was taken a little bit out of context. How should I say this? I don't think he meant it to be cruel. I think she took it too hard, because I think he was just kind of trying to say, like, you just dumped me. We had an extremely passionate relationship for the past however long, and I need this closure, so can you just let me give my final remarks? And she said no. They both put each other through a lot. He was more in the wrong than she was, but they both did. And, you know, if she didn't have 3 other guys waiting to court her, would she still kick him out in the fashion that she did, I wonder? Or would she try to be like, hey, you know, we had this relationship, it didn't work out, let's talk this out? I can't say he would have ended the conversation by saying the right thing. He probably would have tried to win her back again. But in normal circumstances, I think, you know, just let them say what they need to say instead of ending it with,
I do not want you to be my husband.
but I guess we'll see if he gets that closure next week, because he's a crazy freaking something and shows up again. Oh, Luke. They're just not right for each other. Either the timing was wrong or the scenario was detrimental. They obviously had a connection, but it's just not going to work out. I think this week she sends Tyler home. I do. Sorry, I'm scratching my butt. I don't know who she ends up with, honestly. I thought at first it was going to be Peter, but now apparently he had a girlfriend too right before he came on the show. I'm like, I just don't know. That's it for the show. I have a lot of emotions. For some reason, I don't feel like I have one specific person where I'm like so invested. I really want them to win. They've all ticked me off, including Hannah. The only one who didn't give me any grief was John Paul Jones. But that's it. Let me know what you guys think. And I will see you next week for the rose ceremony and the men tell all.